You know that person who laughs at absolutely everything? The one who finds humor in situations that would send most people into a total panic? Yeah, they've probably been through some serious stuff. And I'm not talking about a bad day at work or a minor inconvenience. I'm talking about the kind of profound experiences that fundamentally rewire how you see the world. When someone's world gets flipped upside down by hardship, they often develop a very specific survival mechanism: dark humor. To the outside world, making jokes during a crisis might look like insensitivity, but it's actually the exact opposite. For people who have endured too much, comedy becomes their armor. Laughter isn't a sign that they don't care. It's a fiercely protective shield. They use humor to actively take power away from their pain. Because when you can look at the sheer absurdity of your own suffering and force out a laugh, that trauma instantly loses some of its grip. Every sarcastic remark, every dark joke they crack, is a tiny rebellion. It's their way of looking straight at the things that tried to break them and saying, "You don't get to win today." But that armor does more than just deflect pain. It fundamentally rewires how they process reality. Here is what nobody tells you about people who have endured too much. Their brain literally operates on a different frequency. It is not broken, it is trained. It is trained by sheer necessity to become a masterful survival machine. Over time, they develop what is basically an immunity to life's everyday chaos. Not an immunity to feeling, but an immunity to being completely demolished by sudden changes. Because of this, they become exceptionally good at adapting. A sudden new job? Sure. Moving to a new city? Why not? Their entire life falling apart on a random Tuesday afternoon? They will probably just make a pot of coffee and figure it out. They stay remarkably calm when everything is collapsing, because they have learned that survival is not just possible, it is inevitable. But this is where things take a strange turn, because they have learned the hard way that massive, life-altering events are completely out of their hands. They develop an intense, almost obsessive relationship with control over the tiny things. They will micromanage the absolute smallest details of their day, while remaining eerily zen about massive uncertainties. They are the kind of people who might have a complete existential crisis over using the wrong coffee mug in the morning, yet remain totally chill about their entire career path being up in the air. The contradiction is the entire point. The big stuff is up to fate, but the small stuff they can manage. You might think that someone who has been through literal hell would come out on the other side cynical. You would expect them to be bitter, guarded, and completely closed off to the world. But usually, the complete opposite happens. They become some of the most empathetic people you will ever meet. And I mean aggressively empathetic. Let me give you an example. Someone cuts them off in traffic. Are they going to explode in road rage? Probably not. Their mind is already 3 steps ahead, wondering if that driver is having an agonizing day, going through a messy divorce, or just desperately rushing to the hospital. When you have survived your own severe storms, other people's rain showers just hit you differently. They offer the grace they once needed themselves. This deep empathy turns into a kind of quiet superpower. They can spot pain in someone else from a mile away because they are completely fluent in the language of trauma. A slight, almost invisible shift in your tone of voice, they caught it. That forced smile you put on for the group, they saw right through it, and they are already mentally planning how to check in on you later without making it weird. They know exactly how to read silence. Not just the quietness, but the actual texture of it. They know instantly if a silence is heavy, disappointed, irritated, or simply exhausted. Most people walk into a room and just see the furniture. These people walk in and immediately read the emotional temperature. They sense subtle changes in the atmosphere, the exact same way other people sense a sudden drop in the weather. And here is something genuinely beautiful that comes from all this pain. Psychologists actually have a term for it: post-traumatic growth. It turns out, a lot of people who go through profound trauma do not just bounce back, they bounce forward. Their priorities completely crystallize. Their appreciation for ordinary, quiet moments becomes almost comically intense. Because they have seen exactly how dark the world can get, they allow themselves to be completely vulnerable to the light. They will literally tear up at a really good sunset, or the sound of the rain, or a perfectly quiet morning, and they are not even slightly embarrassed about it. Why? Because nature and quiet moments are safe. A sunset cannot betray you. The rain does not have a hidden agenda. But there is a harsh flip side to this beautiful sensitivity. While their heart is wide open to the world's beauty, their nervous system is still constantly bracing for impact. This is the part nobody warns you about. People who have been through too much often struggle with intense hypervigilance. Their internal threat detection system simply never turns off. Have you ever been to a restaurant with someone who absolutely insists on sitting with their back to the wall, facing the door? Or someone who has 17 different backup plans for a simple, casual coffee date? That is not paranoia. That is a nervous system that learned, the absolute hardest way possible, that safety is a luxury, not a guarantee. They are incredibly tender, yes, but they are always, always watching. Let us talk about relationships for a minute. When it comes to love and friendship, people who have been through too much are often walking contradictions. They will show up for you at 3 in the morning without a single hesitation. If you are falling apart, they are the first ones there with a flashlight and a shovel to help you dig yourself out. But the second you try to show up for them, they completely shut down. They are phenomenal at taking care of other people, because being the caretaker keeps them safely in control. But letting someone else take care of them, that requires a level of trust they simply do not have anymore. The painful truth is that they desperately crave deep, meaningful connection, but they are absolutely terrified of dependency. Why? Because in their history, closeness has always come with a massive price tag. Their nervous system has learned that leaning on someone else usually leads to hitting the ground when that person eventually steps away. So, they brace themselves. And this leads to what is basically the "I am fine" syndrome. They constantly downplay their own painful experiences. Oh, it really was not that bad. Other people have it way worse. I am fine. It is like they have developed a severe, full-body allergy to being perceived as a victim. They survived their absolute darkest days by relentlessly telling themselves they were okay. So admitting they are struggling now feels like a total failure. They learn to need absolutely nobody, which sounds incredibly strong, until you realize it is also incredibly lonely. But here is what rarely gets acknowledged about these people. Beneath the dark humor, beneath the hypervigilance, and beneath that fiercely independent exterior, there is a profound, invisible grief. It is not the grief of losing a loved one. It is the grief of losing themselves. They are actively mourning the person they used to be before the world got its hands on them. They grieve the version of themselves who trusted easily, the version who could laugh out loud without nervously scanning the room first, the version who did not compulsively rehearse every single conversation in their head before it happened, or anticipate a hidden danger in every single quiet moment. How do you explain to someone that you miss a version of yourself that you barely even remember? How do you tell people that you are desperately homesick for a place that only ever existed inside your own mind? They are mourning a childhood they did not fully get to live. They are mourning a softness they were not allowed to keep. And they are grieving a lightness, a freedom, that they only learned about entirely too late. But here is the ultimate truth about that grief. It does not break them. It actually shapes them. It forces them to become quieter, more observant, and deeply intentional. It turns them into someone who fiercely cherishes peace, simply because they know the excruciating cost of chaos. They redefine what strength actually looks like. They know that real power is not about standing tall and never, ever falling apart. True strength is about how many times you can shatter into a million pieces and still manage to pick yourself up off the floor and put yourself back together. Even if the pieces do not fit exactly the same way they used to, over time, their sheer survival transforms into profound insight. Their deepest pain becomes their greatest compassion, and without even realizing it, they become something incredibly rare, a lighthouse. A lighthouse does not shine because it is flawless or unbroken. It shines because it intimately remembers the darkness, and it refuses to let anyone else crash against the rocks. So, the next time you meet someone who seems a little too okay with the chaos, or a little too quick to laugh at their own pain, appreciate them, their humor, their boundaries, and their surprising depth. It was all earned the absolute hardest way.